America for a company called AcceptU. Both are leading counseling companies which work with children to ensure that they get into a dream college abroad. We have been working very strongly with US, UK, and Canada, but are delighted that we're being able to offer so many more countries now. So whatever anyone's financial abilities are, what they want to major or minor, what they want to do later in their life, we try to hope to help each one of you. To my younger students, we help in curriculum choices, in profile building. We also help you in just a conversation. A lot of times, you simply don't know where you want to go, what you want to do, and we're very happy to help you with that too. We'll give you the contact us later. Please excuse this that I do. It's a sore throat because I have been on calls back to back since 8 in the morning today. I think, Ninad, we can start. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, children, boys and girls, today for the UK application support, which is going to be hosted by Shreyas and Harsh and me. Our format is going to be really simple. It's only going to be questions and answers. I would request if any of you have questions, please put it on the chat button. Please keep yourselves on mute. You want to show your faces, wonderful. You don't want to show your faces, that's fine too. But just ensure that your questions are put in the chat box. So either Shreyas, Harsh or me will pick them up, and I'll make sure that they get answered in the 1 hour that we have, because after that, both of them have flights. Shreyas is actually going to be flying within India and Harsh to India. So with that, let's move to the next sheet. Okay, introducing my boys to you, both I'm extremely proud of. Let's start with Shreyas. Shreyas was one of the most dedicated human beings I know. He sat and worked on each and every of his essay. He applied to both US and UK and to very, very competitive colleges. And what is really ironical, and we were just discussing this day before, is that he literally chose a college in US and then last minute switched to LSE. Hopefully we'll get to know today from him why the change, and in retrospect, what does he feel? But what is very important is that he continued to study at Cambridge and today is working as, okay, he hasn't written it here, but he is going to be working in economic consulting here. So that's phenomenal. He's going to be working at CRA, oh, sorry, it mentions it, which is a very, very competitive econ consulting company. Believe me, I know, because my children die to apply there. Harsh is again a special child. This child actually conquered LSE with a scholarship. And please believe me, we do not hear of scholarships in UK. And to get it at LSE, when he did it, I was like, what? Are you crazy? Are you serious? His school called me, his counselors called me. It was a very exciting moment. Obviously, he's done well with his scholarship and made us proud and made his family and himself proud, which is why he is as an investment banking summer analyst and actually has been offered a job there as well. Harsh, I hope I could say that. But with that, let's move to the next. Sorry, I'm going to just walk you all through what is an application with the UCAS, which is a term you all keep hearing, I'm sure. What do you need to apply to UK? Very different from US. So which is why I want to quickly talk about it. English proficiency is very important. And I know there's always a dilemma about, do I need to take an IELTS or not? I would say if your school is not sure, take the IELTS. It's not such a crazy exam. Take it. If you're applying to both US and UK and you've taken the TOEFL, fine, no problem. SOP. The game changer, the event turner of your UK application is your SOP. Very detailed, very rigorous, very academic based. It's all got to do with what do you want to apply to, why, what have you done for it, and what do you want to do with it in the future. Choosing a major, and I know the boys are very particular about this, you have to be very specific what major you're going to be choosing because you can't change it when you're in UK, but also dynamically you can't change it when you're applying to these 5 universities. So you can't say, maybe one I'll do psychology, another one I'll do business. So very important to keep a step on that. Filling up the portal, very tedious, very long, has to be done. Selection of 5 universities, that's all you can literally do. First choice, second choice needs to be highlighted and aligned activities related to the major. So this is, I would say, a stopgap arrangement of what goes into the application, but both my children will be able to elaborate further. Ninad, I'm feeling really bad about the throat. Sorry. Let's go a little more into the SOP. Like I said, it's so academic oriented. So maybe you're a Kathak dancer and you want to do a psychology major. Don't talk about the Kathak too much unless you can show if Kathak is what made you get into psychology, or Kathak actually introduced you to other people or students or patients because of which you realize how important psychology is. Okay. Similarly, let's say you're the sports captain, you're in your soccer team. If you're not being able to show how it helps you to want to do a math major, I recommend don't show it. You can point it as leadership and intangible skills, but again, towards a major you want to apply to. We've discussed filling up the UCAS very detailed. Why do you need the support? These are the reasons. Next, Nina. Selection of universities, majors, very crucial. You have to be very careful. It's unlike the Common App. You can choose 12. You can keep changing your major, keep changing your essays. It's not like that in the UCAS. Dates and deadlines, there's so many of them. They're rolling admissions, early admissions, exam deadlines. So everything keeping in mind, you've got to be very careful. Please be alerted. The UCAS does inform you, but do your own homework as well. Next, Ninat. Who are we and why can we help? So, like I said, I'm the co-founder to Admission Specialist. It's a customized consulting nonprofit where we are trying to help students right from grade 8 on to grade 12, but even after that, while they're in college and even after that to get into grad school. We are bringing AcceptU into India, Middle East, and Africa. AcceptU is world's largest virtual counseling company. Each and every single counselor of theirs has been an admissions officer, and they worked in top colleges, which is Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Cambridge, Oxford, and so on. When you work with us, what you get is an opportunity not only to work with the advisors, but also SOP experts and students who are pursuing or have completed their education and are working in UK. That's a lot I've spoken. A little bit a flash shot of the students that we have, which is the most exciting for me, Ninad. Some of our students who've got into UK. Oh, sorry, I forgot our team. So that's Mark, who was the Dean of Admissions at Cornell, Stephen, who was the Dean of Admissions at Princeton, and me. I love the question that is coming. What is SOP? Full form, statement of purpose. Rest of it, Harsh and Shreyas will explain. Students. So a couple of students, Disha did arts and she's actually now doing her master's in Parson with full scholarship. Ria is doing aeronautics at Cambridge. Shreyas, as we said, is LSE Cambridge. I can't see the rest. Yeah. Then we have Ishita, who's Cordon Bleu and Burbeck, where she's studying culinary and management. And Tanav, who's got into University of Oxford, but he has chosen to go to Harvard instead. So with that, let's pull up the contact us page. I promised Harsh and Shreyas I will not take too much time to present. So let's move on to Harsh and Shreyas. Please unmute yourselves, both you boys. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask questions, but at any point of time, y'all can just jump in and put your comments on the chat box and we will take those questions. We will give it priority as well. So my first question, and I think Harsh and Shreyas, both of y'all were very fussy about this, is how do you actually pick up your colleges and how do you actually pick up your majors? Harsh, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I think for the college list is something that I think is one of the most crucial areas that you need to like focus on. And I think it's not, I think most people, what they do is that they just go ahead and just pick like the top 5 colleges in the UK. Like I'm aware people do like Oxford, UCL, LSE, KCL, and let's just say Warwick. But I don't think that is the right way to go about it, because you just change up your majors here and there, and like I think it's not very straightforward then. So I think a better approach would be to choose your major first, choose what you want to do, and then pick the colleges according to that, according to where your requirements are, according to what city you want to go to, according to what campus life you want. So like personally for me, what I did is that I chose my major first, which is actuarial science. So if someone who's not aware about actuarial science, it's basically maths and stats, and I use that maths and stats to solve problems in finance, essentially solve risk management problems in finance. So yeah, a really exciting field, and I chose that. And then I was like, okay, let me just pick like two good colleges, two targets, and then two matches, and then one I think, uh, I don't know, it's called safety.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I just picked LSE and Warwick as my targets, and then my match was I think Southampton and Manchester, and my safety was Heriot Watt University. So I think a better way would be to go about just choose your major first and then choose your five colleges instead of the other way around.
Appreciate that, Harsh. Shreyas, you want to add value to that?
Sure. Firstly, hi everyone. I know it's a very interesting phase in your lives where you're half nervous and half excited to get to college. And I echo those feelings. I was there 4 years ago, and I was in a similar boat where I didn't know, how to start with the process. And one of the major things that even Harsh talked about was trying to get your college selection right. And I would agree with him and say that first pick your major and then try to list down your colleges. um, Another thing that you can actually do is that you can, because in the US, it's not really clear what each course wants, but in the UK, each course has detailed about what grade requirements they need. So first, you need to be really clear about whether you can meet these targets. And in the UK, once you meet an offer, most of the offers are actually conditional offers, and they need you to meet these certain grade criteria. So, research on those, see if those are more or less in line with what you expect yourself to perform, and then you can take it from there. Personally, what I did was, so I applied to both econ and management courses. So I looked for universities which offered such courses. But also, what you could do is that, for example, because my personal statement was focused a bit on economics and a bit on management, and I tied them up, I applied to two courses at the same university. So you could also do that if that's something you're interested in, because five applications means five course and college combination. So what I did was I did LSE economics, LSE management, then UCL econ, UCL management, and then Warwick economics. So you could customize it that way as well if that's something that you're keen on doing. But you have to be really careful when you do that, because you only have about 600 to 700 odd words to communicate why you want to study what you want to study. So if you pick two majors that are completely poles apart, then you're actually putting yourself in trouble. But if it's something that's very closely related, then that's something you could consider as well.
And I love both the answers here because Harsh went very specific. And I remember this, Harsh, you actually did a research for almost 4 months on actuarial science, met 3, 4 people. I remember introducing you to someone who was then studying from London as well. And you went very specifically into that, while Shreyas chose something more generic. But within the generic, he still chose two. So that's something I will want to boil out to you, children, that if you're wanting to do, let's say, economics with theater, be careful, because you'd probably be better than applying to US as well, rather than just UK. So with that, let's move to the biggest question that comes when filling the UCAS. Everyone's biggest and simple fear is the statement of purpose or the personal statement. Shreyas, why don't you explain to us what is that and how did you work around it? And then, of course, we'll have a Harshad in value.
Sure. So personally, when I did my personal statement, it was a lot into the application process. Like Ma'am had mentioned earlier, I applied to the US colleges as well, and the UK deadline, if you're not applying to Oxbridge, comes in Jan. So I had some experience filling out US essays, and it's a bit different to that because the UK application, the UK statement of purpose, um, You try to talk about everything in a very concise manner. Whereas in the US, you have one essay to talk about sports, one essay to talk about your academics, one essay to talk about student life. But here you're trying to put everything together in 700 words. So what I did was I talked about why I'm interested in studying what I'm studying. And that forms the core of your personal statement, regardless of what you're studying, because that's what you're trying to communicate to your admissions officers. And because in the UK, you're submitting one personal statement for 5 colleges, it doesn't have to be specific to one college in the sense that you're saying, oh, I want to study this course because XYZ professor teaches at so and so university. You don't need to go into the specifics of that, but the focus really has to be on communicating, what have you done that's really showing your love towards this subject. What have you done in the past? What do you aim to do in the future at university? What kind of courses you want to take? So you can talk about, a particular area of courses or a field of research that you're interested in, and try to really tell the academic officer that you're passionate about the subject. Because in the UK, once you get in for a subject, you can't really change your major in the 3 years that you're there. So you really have to hit on the effect that this major is really for you, and you really like studying it. So just talk about different extracurriculars you've done to try to show that, attend different competitions or done some kind of research, internships, and try to do it in a cohesive and concise manner, because again, you only have 600 to 700 words to communicate this.
Fantastic. Harsh?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the personal statement, I think it's important to have a good mix, because I think the major difference between the US and the UK is that the UK personal statement is completely academic. They don't expect you to talk about some cricket you play, or if you're in some student council. So I think it's all about getting the right mix. And I think the right mix would be somewhere about, do like 60%, like in your personal statement, do 60% academic, do like 35% curricular activities, and then 5% you can do extracurricular activities, which is like, I would say 5% is kind of like optional as well. So for your 60% academic, I think what you should mention is you should go about mentioning about the classes that you've taken, any scores that you've already got, like let's just say your 10th grade scores or like your GCSE scores. I think it would be good to mention about your subject choices, things that you're studying right now, any research that you've taken, any extra classes that you're taking. So like I actually did this research assistantship at the University of Rajasthan. So that was something that I mentioned there. Talk about any books that you've read, especially like if you're applying for economics. I think I'm aware that loads of people mention about some books that they've read. And then for curricular activities, I would say mention internships which are related to your field. So like I chose actuarial science, so I did this internship related to actuarial science in my high school. So I mentioned about that. I mentioned about some programming skills, because that is something that is really widely used in actuarial science. So I mentioned about like some R programming that I learned. So I think that is something that is really important. And that extra 5% you can mention about, let's just say that you're anything, like let's just say that you were the leader of your student council at school. So you can mention that, yeah, I gained some leadership skills from there. So I think getting the right mix is very important, and it's very, very important not to give them irrelevant information, because that will not do you any good. And my second tip on the personal statement is that it's important to tell the university what will you bring to them, but it's also very important that you tell them that what will happen later on. So I think like most people do, what most people do is that they tell that, oh, I'm going to bring this to the university, I'm going to bring, but like the university is interested in like what is the university's benefit in trying to give you an admission. They just want a good employee at the end of the day. They want a good like employable person, or they want someone who can bring research to their school, do some research initiatives. So I think that is very important, and you need to mention about what your future plans might look like. So I ended up mentioning about how I want to become an actuary in the UK, and how I want to like do some research initiatives at the university, and that is something that made me like stand out in the application process, because at the end of the day, like everyone's looking to maximize their own benefits and their own payoffs. If I talk in economics, so yeah, like it's very important to like just show the university that your benefit from admitting me will be this, and my benefit will be this. So you need to talk about both the things, I think.
Absolutely beautiful, Harsh. And actually, this doesn't differ whether you're applying to any country, any college. What do you bring to me? What do I bring to you? Are the two questions that you must be able to answer. In US, it's more specifically known as the why essay, why a college, where you can write it. But in this case, there is only that much space you have. Harsh, I do want to ask you this question, which you said, and I kind of wasn't sure because I don't really make my children do that. You mentioned that mention your scores. I'm assuming you're talking about the UCAS portal, not the SOP.
Yeah, so what I did was I ended up mentioning about my just like my percentage, or my 10th grade percentage, and I basically did that for a reason. I did that because I wanted to show that, oh, I've got I like basically I wanted to show that I topped my school in this particular subject.
Ah,
It was economics in
got
particular.
it.
So
Got
that is
it.
why I wanted to tie that to why I want to like study something which is like a mix of economics and stats. So yeah.
Got it. So, okay, now I remember. So, this is important, children. Please don't start making a tabulation of your results on your SOP. It is covered in the UCAS section of academics. What Harsh wanted to do was, because there was no place to highlight as the topper in the school for economics, so which is why he used that. Okay, so be careful
Exactly.
here. So, but with that, Shreyas, I think Harsh mentioned a lot of what he spoke about as his academics, curriculars, and co-curriculars. It would be great if you could also talk a little about that. And I think that's also a question where someone's asked, what were your curriculars? So, Shreyas, do you mind jumping in and doing that, please?
Sure, of course. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned a lot about that. So like I mentioned earlier, my SO, I talked about the IB program. My extended essay was in economics. So then I talked about what my research was on. I even interned at the same place where I used the data from. So I talked a bit about my internship, which was on which was a peer-to-peer lending market. So it was under fintech, and it was talking about basically it's a different kind of economic model that they were operating in, because that's an example of platform economics. So I talked a bit about that. Then I talked about why those kind of social commerce platforms interest me. Then I talked about the that formed a lot about my econ extracurriculars. Then I also talked about how I'm interested in economic problems that happen throughout the world. And because in high school I used to attend a lot of MUNs, I brought that angle in and talked about how I learned a lot about different economic problems through MUNs, gave me a different perspective on social issues throughout the world, and how I could view them through an economic lens. And then finally, I spent a little bit of time talking about my extracurriculars. I do remember that. One of them being, I used to play a lot of football in high school. I still do actually. So I talked about how that's taught me about different life skills that could be useful, whatever course I study, whichever university I go to. For example, teamwork and trying to balance being a team player and improving your individual abilities. So I talked a bit about that and tried to tie it in to how I see myself being at university in the future. Like Harsh said, what could I bring to the table? So that's how I got my extracurriculars in that. So, on the top of my head, that's what I can remember. I talked a bit about volunteering as well.
Right.
So we had a non-profit initiative, and because I was applying for a management course, and because I founded it and I had to handle the finances, the organization of it, I talked about, some kind of previous managerial experience I had and how I hope to build on that. So yeah, that's what my personal statement was more or less based upon.
So if you notice, students and parents so different, so dynamically different, while actually, to be honest, both of them, the core impact was economics. So, but how totally differently they both approach their SOP, which is why when people say that, oh my God, the UCAS essay, the SOP, there's only one way to write, absolutely untrue. And I love the way Harsh did that 60-30-40, 60-30-10 ratio, because that's very interesting. It also means that you can work around these percentages as long as your academic is priority. Shreyash, Harsh, I'm going to try and take some of the questions that we have here because there are quite a few. Medicine questions we're not going to answer today because this is really covering a more generic view. MedTrack is very, very different. Please reach out to us on this email address and we will try and give you a one-on-one for that. Um, let's move to, I want to major in economics for undergrad, but I want to keep law as an option in the future. But since law is an undergrad course in the UK, how can I do that is one of the questions. Will any of you want to jump in to answer that, please?
I'm happy to answer that.
Sounds
So
good.
I think let's just say that firstly, I would want to say that the major difference between the UK and the US application is that the UK application is kind of rigid in what you have to study, and once you choose that, you have to study that for 3 years. But at the same time, what you need to realize is that what you choose in terms of your career is something which is completely varied. So let's just say that I am someone who's studying an actuarial science degree, but I'm getting into investment banking, and I know that some of my friends they're studying like English literature, studying like things like history, things like geography, and they're still getting into banking. And the same case goes for consulting and law as well. So if you want to really study law, then I think it might be a bit tricky to like do both economics and law. But if you want to work in law, then I think the perfect way would be to do a major in economics or something which is more related to law. Let's just say politics and economics, or something like economics and economic history, and then try to tie that to your career, like to your job application, where you end up doing law. So I think that might be a better way to go about things. But yeah, I think if you want to do both, like study both economics and law, then I think that might be a bit tricky.
I'm going to tell Shreyas to answer that. But before that, if I may just jump in, generally, I recommend my students to take something a little more diverse. If you go very, very close to law and you're unhappy for whatever reasons, and also if you want to leave this country and work in another country or come back to your own home, sometimes that becomes a tricky area. But if you do a course like PPE, and that's my eternal all-time favorite course in UK, I will not deny it. I think I must have pushed both these boys at some point of time as well. I'm sorry if I did it. They're both grinning at me. But it was my favorite course. I strongly believe in it. I'd say go with that because that literally opens hundreds of different routes for you, including law. And I say that with confidence because I have a student who's now working in a law firm after PPE. So, which is why with that, Shreyas, did you want to add anything there?
In terms of the specifics of how you could get into law, I mean, I think Harsh has done a pretty good job of covering it. But I think for the sake of transparency, I just want to let people know that, I started off studying management in my first year, and then I made the switch to econ my second year. But the entire process was, it was not very ideal. It was a bit stressful. It doesn't happen very often. So if you, want to switch courses after first year, I would strongly advise against it because it's not something that's seen very often in the UK system, and it's less than like 5% of applications you could get accepted for a transfer. So if you're banking on that, I'd say don't do that. Be pretty clear in your mind on what you want to study, or approximately what you want to study, and then take it from there.
I so
Also,
agree with that.
just this quick thing that I wanted to mention. Sorry. So you were talking about PPE. There's just this fun fact that I wanted to mention. So PPE at Oxford is like the Prime Minister course. So like usually the UK Prime Minister is from Oxford PPE. So if you end up doing Oxford PPE, then probably someone from your cohort is going to be the Prime Minister. Maybe you actually. Yeah.
I like that answer. Yes, I have read that, but I didn't remember it. So I'm so glad you brought it up. Going back to what Shreya said, children, please don't bank on it. I've had enough kids who've had to, or know enough kids who've just had to come back home. And also remember, economics to management or management to economics is still a little easier. And probably that 5% took place because of that. But I've had enough students who've turned around and said, even if they wanted to move within a neuroscience to another neuroscience field, it hasn't happened. So please don't go with that. There is a question here: is ED something that's possible for UK colleges? It's not. ED is a very US term. But Harsh, Shreyas, any one of you, want to talk a little about the rolling admissions, because that's almost like if you go in early, your chances of getting in is early, right?
Shreyas, do you want to cover that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Because I think when I applied, it was basically when I applied to the UK, it was a panic application. I submitted 2 days before the deadline, if I'm not wrong. And because it's submitted so late, I was a bit later to receive an offer compared to some of my other peers. Obviously, I didn't know about that then, but when I came to undergrad and I was talking to my friends and for the
Shreyas, you might want to switch off your video because I think
Oxbridge deadline,
I
or
have a
a bit earlier
Shreyas.
process. And the earlier you submit the, is this better? Can you hear me now?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's a bit it's not ideal, the connection around me. Sorry, I was just saying that yeah, I think the earlier you apply, the earlier you find out. But as long as you apply before Jan 15th, right, your application is considered at most places. It's not like you would be rejected if you apply towards the end. But if you want to keep your options open, if you apply to the US as well and you want to make a decision pretty early on, then you might want to consider applying slightly earlier. But answering your question specifically, there is no ED process. There are only two deadlines. One is in October if you're applying to either Oxford or Cambridge, but if you're applying to neither of those, then your deadline is mid-Jan.
Correct. And here's something I do want to tell you about rolling admissions, which a lot of UK colleges have. The earlier you apply, the earlier are your chances, could be earlier are your chances to get in. And I say this confidently. My son applied and he was in December already. We'd got his offer from LSE actually. And a lot of other children, we encourage them, if UK is your priority, do it. But again, it's going to be a conditional offer. So be careful that you have your backup systems in place. I see a hand, but please just type your question here because we're not really going to raise questions and ask you all to answer. Okay, there is a question saying, I haven't yet finalized my major. Therefore, I have a very generic question of fees, accommodation, and scholarships on what to expect for a 4-year. Typically, you will find this information on the college website. You can also look up UCAS. Remember, scholarship is very, very rare. We have an exceptional case. Actually, both these kids are exceptional, but there are a lot of outside of academic scholarships that have started opening up. So you should probably do a little more studies on that as well. Okay, I have another question. In the SOP, should I be mentioning the 10th grade of the subjects relating to my major or the entire 10th grades? I think, Harsh, do you want to take that question and just specify?
Yeah. I think it's all about not repeating information because like they know your 10th grade scores because of the transcript that your school has sent, because of the scores that you've put in the UCAS application already. So do not put scores essentially in the person's statement because they don't want to see that twice. Just like if it is something which is very, very relevant to what you're doing. So let's just say that you were like the school topper or you were like the world topper for some GCSE subject, then I think it's worth mentioning that I was the world topper and not the actual score. So yeah, that's the best way of going about it.
I agree there. Could you elaborate on scholarships available is a question. Shreyas, Harsh, any of you all want to talk about this? Else I will talk about it.
Yeah, I think so. I am on a scholarship at LSE, so it's a 120% scholarship. So like 100% they're paying for me, and 20% I'm getting from them to pay as a stipend to pay for my maintenance cost and to just like pay for my rent and my personal expenses and everything. So I think the main thing about scholarships that you need to realize is that scholarships is something in the UK. Is that something that you do after you get your offer? So it's not something that you can do with your application as you do in the US. So you need to apply to your five colleges first, then you need to get offers, and then you apply for scholarships to whatever colleges you get offers from. So for LSE, it was basically like I got the offer from LSE, and then I had to submit the scholarship application. So I had to submit an extra personal statement, 1,000 words, just talking about why I need the scholarship, how I'll use the money, and how is this scholarship going to better help me achieve my future goals, my dreams. And they basically want to know how I will use the money in order to benefit myself and the university. And that is what I talked about. And other than that, it's just personal details that you have to fill. So yeah, scholarships is something that you need to be patient with. Just get offers first, and then you apply for scholarships.
Thank you. I think that was a very important answer, Harsh. Thanks for covering it. I think we had it as a question, but good, the kids have asked already. What
Yeah.
are all the documents we need to submit for the UCAS? When you go to the UCAS, everything will be mentioned there. So don't stress about that. That's hardly important. Everything is very doable. They're not very document specific. So you don't really have to freak out on that. I do like this question a lot. And maybe Shreyas, you can jump in and then maybe Harsh can also help. What if the extracurriculars opted aren't that related to the major I've selected? Will it hamper my acceptance rate? So before we even talk about the acceptance rate, because that's not really in our hands here, Aditi, let's talk about, does it hamper the chances? I mean, look, hamper the chances of you choosing that major? I think, Shreyas, what do you think?
So, I mean, like I'd mentioned previously, right, in your personal statement, whatever you talk about has to be tied to your major somehow, or at least if you don't want to tie to your major, at least in the section, where you talk about what you're going to bring to the university. So if you think it is, let's say some kind of dance form that you're interested in, and you see that, it's something that you're really passionate about and you want to continue doing it in a university, you can talk a line or two about it, but don't spend too many words talking about, why you are interested in it, or, what drives you about it, because like I said, it's only 700 words. So it's good to mention some things that you think are unique and can set you apart, but don't give that too much importance, or don't give that too much space in your.
Yeah, and I think similarly to shares, the only thing is that I would like, if your personal statement is going like a line or two above, then I think get rid of the extracurriculars. They don't really want to see it. They don't care. It's just academics and curricular activities that they want to see. Extracurricular is not something that they really want to see, and I think it's really hard to tie that to what your major is as well. So let's just say you do cricket, or you do dance, or swimming or something like that. I think it's really hard to tie that to why I want to study economics. So yeah, but again, like something like Shreyas did, like let's just say his volunteering initiative, he could tie that to his managerial like his management degree. So that is something that is good, and I think that is something I would count as curricular more than extracurricular. So yeah, I think that is why I said that the mix between that 5% of extracurricular is something that you can even skip, and just try to focus on as many curricular activities as possible, because yeah, they don't really care about extracurriculars.
So I'm not sure, but I'm actually thinking Aditi is probably meaning that what if she has no activities? I think she's used the word extracurricular, but in India, we loosely use curricular as a word, like you probably both know. So here's what we define our curriculars as children. There is an academic activity, which is an extracurricular, but it's academic related. There is a curricular or a co-curricular, which is outside of academics, but in some ways associated or complementing what you want to study. And then there's an extracurricular, which we call the non-aligned activity, right? Now, Aditi, if you mean you have no activities which are related to your major, I'd say be more creative, because chances are, let's say you like dancing, and I know we're all circling around that theme because we do see a lot of that cultural activity balance from India. And you are maybe teaching younger girls how to dance, or you're working with someone who's from a non-profit, or you're performing for a non-profit, then that also shows your ability. And let's say you want to study engineering. So you can say, I believe that engineering and women are not a very well represented area. And with my dance and through my dance, I want to encourage that. Right. So it's also a creative balance of how you use it. Again, something Harsh and Shreya brought out is, look, if you want to do a research, look, if you want to read a book, go through the different faculty, go through an online course. There's just so much available in today's day and age and time that to not have done anything is probably not making you stand at the best stead, especially for UK. Boys, is that okay what I said? Are you all fine with it
Yes,
too?
I agree. I agree.
Awesome. So with
Yeah,
that,
makes sense.
got it, Shreyas. Thank you. How important are internships for your college apps?
Shreyas, do you want to take that?
Sure, I can briefly talk about it. I would say, yeah, well, they are important in the sense that if you have it, definitely mention it and talk about it, especially if it ties down to your major. But I would not say it's a make or break. I've had loads of friends who've done a similar course as me without any internship experience, right? So it's about you doing something. If you've done something that's even remotely like work experience based, something like volunteering as well, and you think it ties down with what you want to study, then mention it. It's always good to mention things that you've done, even if it's, even if you don't directly think it's related, but you think it's, it's something that's taught you something valuable or something that, you can put in your major, regardless of whether it's work experience or volunteering. Put that in, but like I said, again, it is not make or break. If you haven't done it, it's okay. Talk about something else that is related to your major. So it's not compulsory like you asked.
I do want to add a little here. Because of the pandemic, very few children actually got an opportunity to do internships. So there has been a change there. But when we talk about internships, a lot of times Indian children turn around and say, oh, but it's such a small company, who's going to look at it? That I don't think is what matters. What matters is, what have you learned there? How did it contribute to the major you want to apply to? And how will it help you to do what you want in the future? So, it's okay if you probably worked in a small company run by your mom or your dad or your uncle or a friend's father. As long as you're learning, if you're going there to just sit and, do Instagram, you could be in the biggest company like in HSBC and there's still no point, right? So that's what I feel. Harsh, do you think you have an alternate opinion on any of this?
No, I actually completely agree with your and Shreyas's answer. Just quick point on internships. Just try to tie that to what you're trying to do. So let's
Always.
just say economics. Try to do something in economic consulting or something related to banking, or like something related to finance. Basically, if you're doing let's just say PP or applying for politics, then I think a good way would be to just talk about some political campaigning that you've done, or like even something as small as like student government. So yeah, just try to tie that to your major, and internships you should be fine with.
Very important point. There's no point doing an internship if it doesn't align with your major. I think that's what Harsh is reaching out to. And I think Shreyas and I would both wholeheartedly agree to that. We have another question. Do UK applications look at all four grades, 9, 10, 11, and 12, or just IBDP 1 and 2? Also, would you say UK applications are holistic, similar to US ones? So basically, the question is, how's UK and US different? This could take
uh,
1 hour on its own, but
I'm actually happy to answer that in 1 minute. But yes, they do look at all four grades, your entire high school grades. And secondly, how different is UK to US? I'm saying if you're applying US, then apply UK, just because you'll have more options open. And I think you've already done in the effort, so might as well apply UK. Because think about it, UK, you're getting to apply to 5 colleges with 600 words of one essay. Whereas in the US, what you're doing is that you're probably writing 5 essays for one college. So I think just try to tailor one of your essays, like tailor one of your Y major essays, and try to like make your personal statement from that. And you can apply to 5 colleges, and let's just say you get into 3. So you've got like options in the US, and then you've got 3 options in the UK as well. And I think it's always good to have options. That is how I think me and Shreyas ended up here. Both of us applied to the US, but like just ended up applying to the UK for options, and our options turned out to be like better in terms of what we had got in the US, especially for me. So and like also with the scholarship, so I was like, okay, fine, might as well go to the UK. So just simply like if you're applying US, then apply UK. There's no harm, and it's I think more beneficial.
Shreyas, do you want to answer the holistic aspect of the question? I think Harsh has really very practically brought out the point that we must have backups, and that backups bring a lot of happiness. No one really knows what's their best fit till they actually get in and start doing the research. So I agree with you there, Harsh. But Shreyas, do you want to talk about the holisticness?
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah. I mean, before I get to that, I think, what Harsh talked about, the backup thing, I completely agree with that. There's no harm in really applying, especially, guess most people at this point in life haven't still figured out what their long-term goals are. And if you're pretty flexible living in either the US or the UK, especially for education, then, really go for it. Um, in terms of the holisticness of the process, in my experience at least, I would say that I find the US application to be a lot more holistic. They look at a lot more other things. I think even previously we've mentioned that the UK, the emphasis, even the personal statement is very much on the academic aspect of it. But I guess in the US, there are a lot of essays which help communicate your other extracurricular activities, or other aspects of the application which the UK really doesn't cover. You do have overlaps, in both kind of applications. The letters of recommendation are very important. Your Y major essay or the UCAS personal statement is still as important. Your grades are important in both
Exactly,
kind
yeah.
of applications. And most importantly, I think in the US, when you apply and you get an offer, most offers are unconditional. So once you've applied, it's done. You can't do horribly wrong, but if you mess up a bit here and there, it's still okay in the US process, from what I've experienced at least. But in the UK, they give you some kind of requirements, and you have to meet those requirements once you even get an offer, because they're conditional offers. So that I found to be one of the biggest differences. I've had friends who unfortunately haven't had their conditions met, and even after repeated emails to the schools, they didn't find any luck. So that's something I urge you to keep in mind when applying to the UK.
Perfect. Now we're getting a lot of questions on scholarships. I'm going to tell you one thing. It's not just for UK citizens or any citizens. It really depends on how you manage to write your application essay for scholarship. And then also there is full and many chances of not being available. I remember when we did a research at Harsh's time, for the last 6 years, not one Indian student had actually got that 100%, 20% offer. I do feel in his time, it was even possible because of the major he selected and the fact that he managed to bring down that actuarial science so closely and so well connected in his SOP. So keep in mind, children, if scholarships is important, you must apply to US because they definitely are a lot more liberal about funding. And especially if you are not hung up on the top 10 or the top 15 or the top 20, your chances of scholarships is a lot higher. Even Canada is a lot cheaper. Even Singapore gives you loans. So please be focused. If financial aid is a crucial point. Then don't get stuck to UK alone. We have another question on law, and it's okay, Shreyas and Harsh, if you both don't want to answer it. It says law is 3 years in UK, but it's US, it's 4 years. Is there a way I can do masters in US? So if neither of you want to answer it, then I can take it on.
I think I can answer that. So I think not even law, any degree in the UK is 3 years, and any degree in the US is usually 4 years. And similarly with masters, UK is 1 year, and masters in the US is 2 years. So yes, loads of people do their 3 years degree in the UK, then go for their masters in the US, and that is something which is perfectly possible. Like any combination of that is really possible. So yeah, I think masters is something that you can plan on later on.
I think what you might need to do is add work experience, though.
Yeah.
So that's critical for any masters in US, because they're not going to take you on unless you have work experience. With that, I have another question here. What is the level
Sorry,
of
ma'am.
math?
Could I just
Sorry, Shreyas,
pitch in
please
there
jump in.
because
Yes,
yeah,
please do that.
because I've had a couple of friends who applied to masters in the US, and there are instances of people doing a 3-year undergrad and doing a 1.5-year master's straight in the US afterwards. So it is not completely ruled out. But what is important is that each university and each master's program has its own different requirements. I know when I was doing my research, some programs explicitly stated that you have to have had 4 years of prior education. Some said, you could do 3 years and it's fine. Some said, like ma'am mentioned, you need some 1 or 2 years of work experience. So what kind of master's course you're applying and where you're applying plays a big difference. And if you're really keen on trying to like plan your entire, 5 or 6 years of education out, then, you might want to do some research, but, whatever you do, there are options available
There are
for
options.
what you want to do. Yeah,
I'm glad you said that, Shreyas, which means please do your research, which also means you can demonstrate interest. If there is a particular university or a school you want to apply to in US, you can write to them and ask them. Second, remember there will be testing. So please study the testing. Okay, there will be a GRE or a GMAT requirement or whatever. Please know that. I have a very interesting question here. What is the level of math in economic courses in the UK? Shreyas, I think you should take that question.
I mean, I'm sure even Harsh can handle it, but I'll be honest, I wasn't prepared for the level of math. Maybe that's just me, but maybe someone else had a different experience. It started out very fine. My first year, the maths was very elementary, what I did in my 2 years of IB. And then it really picked on in second and third year. So I guess that's something you have to be at least mentally prepared for. It's not impossible. It's just that I felt that I had to put in, a lot more independent study. And I think this is an overarching theme. I know I can't speak about the US college experience, but in the UK college experience, because the amount of contact hours you have is quite limited, a lot of it comes down to independent study. So you have to be ready to, pull up your socks and do some kind of studying on your own every now and then. If you don't understand concepts, go to a library, churn some problems out. There are a lot of office hours which are helpful as well. So particularly the level of math I did find was a bit challenging, at least in my third year. In my third year, I'd spend a lot of time just trying to understand the maths behind some of the theories. Once you crack it, you feel happy, you feel like you've achieved something, but the entire process is a bit strenuous. And I'm sure Harsh has a few words to add as well.
I think if you just attend a top tier university in the UK, then any course that you do, literally any course that you do has going to have will have a certain amount of math in it. Even if you do something like politics or like something like straight politics, you'll have a lot of math there as well. And that is, I think, the one of the reasons why a UK education is quite rigorous, because they do expect a lot from you. And again, like it's a lot of self study that you have to do. Okay, university provides you with a lot of support, but I think it's very different to teachers in school and professors in university. like teachers in school care about you. They they really spoon feed you, and they really run after you to get your assignments done and get your homework done and everything, and get good grades in your exams. But professors in universities don't really care about you, and they really they just enter the university. I'm just trying to show you the simple reality that there is. So they just enter the lecture theater, they do a lecture for about 1 or 2 hours, and then they leave. And then if you have any questions, then you can run up to them, you can ask them. But other than that, it's pretty much self-study that you have to do. So I think yes, yeah, the amount of math is a bit intense, I would agree. Beat any course, and also just be prepared to do a lot of it on independently. And but yeah, it's manageable at the end of the day. It's not like we're not trying to scare you, but it's manageable. It's just something like an eye opener, really.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure that you managed that very well, Harsh and Shreyas, but here's what I'm going to tell you, Hema. Math has become very crucial across all majors. And the reason that is happening is also because when the companies are looking to hire, they are focusing on the level of analytical ability that that student is bringing. Right. So when Shreya says or Harsh says that literally any major you see has math, they're correct. And it's not just UK, it's the same in Singapore, it's the same in Canada, it's the same in US. The only difference between UK and US, what's happening is in UK, your major is shoved in a tight 2.5 year, literally, period. In US, you have a softer period. So you have a 101 and a 201, and the professors and the TAs and the RAs and the officers, and a lot more to soften your blow, if I may say so. It's just a cushion there. Having said that, math is not something you can work around. So children, anyone in a younger class, don't drop math. Don't think you don't like math because you have to fake it till you make it. Say I love math to yourself every single day. Okay. And I'm so glad we had this question. Thank you, Hema. It really means a lot to me that we have this question. Do we have an option of majors and minors?
I think it really depends on your degree, but yeah, there's no options for minors. Only options you really have is that you can do a degree like economics and economic history, or something like philosophy, politics, and economics, or something like politics and economics. I think they're introducing this new course at LSE called politics and data science,
Data
which is I
science.
think really interesting. But yeah, no options for minors, just majors. Also, I actually have a flight in a few hours, so I might have to leave. But yeah, like, all the best for your applications. It's like, don't let the stress get to you. And just this quick point on so I basically did CBSE. So I don't know if any of you did CBSE here, but I actually did commerce with mathematics in CBSE. And yeah, like, just wanted to do a quick point on people who are studying like national curriculums. So if you're studying a national curriculum, just make sure that your person statement is everything that you can give your 100% on, because your scores is something which are non-controlling. I saw a question about recommendations. Recommendations is again something you don't have any control over. Your scores you don't have any control over. Your predicteds you don't have any control over. The only control that you have on your entire UK application is your person statement and your college choices. So just try to churn those things out, and other than that, don't think about anything else. Just try to do your best in these two fields, and you should be fine. So yeah, don't think about if you're not doing IB, if you're doing CBSE, because I used to get that a lot. Like, I used to like loads of people used to tell me that you should do IB, but it was too late. By like, I wanted to do it, but it was too late by then. But regardless, just give your 100%, whatever your circumstances are. And I would like to point it out that they do take your circumstances into consideration as well, because they look at your context as well. They don't look at everyone in a similar context. Someone who's paying like 30K and going to Eton, and someone who's who's studying at a state school for free. Like both of them are looked at in their educational contexts and not judged equally. So yeah, just wanted to point that out, and just do your best in whatever situation you are, and yeah, all the best.
I'm so glad,
um,
Harsh, you could
yeah.
join us. Thank you. And it was really funny that we got mixed up with the timings and we thought you will miss this entirely. So this 1 hour means a lot. Thank you, Shreyas, for having pointed it out so that Harsh could join. Harsh, bye-bye. Have a safe flight
Yeah,
home, beta. And I'll be in touch with you once you're in India. Message me once you reach your airport.
yeah,
Have a
right.
safe
Okay.
night.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
See
See
you.
you. See you. Cheers. See you,
We
ma'am.
will
Bye.
still go on. Sorry about the emotional little bit, but then they are all my children. We will continue taking questions. Shreyas will have to take them almost all by himself. Shreyas, I'll try and help you as much as possible because the questions just seem to be pouring in. I mean, before I finish, I have another 18. We don't have that kind of time. I'm going to have to select a few. Please remember, send your questions to us on these email addresses or WhatsApp. And we are providing special resources, customized resources. If you are already an AcceptU student, of course, we'll try to give you an opportunity to work with Shreyas or Harsh based on their conveniences and availabilities as well. The rest of you, please reach out to us and we'll try and offer you some package or the other, which is going to be customized as per your requirement. I know Shreyas also has a flight, so which exams are to be taken and when for the application? Is community service important in UK? Shreyas, you want to just quickly jump into that?
So yeah, what was the
So
first part?
first question is, do you need to take any exams and when, and community service?
So yeah, so the exams part of it in the UK application process, if you apply to either Oxford or Cambridge, and I'm not sure if there is a vetting stage before, and then you have to take the exam. But if you apply to either Oxford or Cambridge, then 99% you have to take an exam at some point. I personally didn't apply to either of them for undergrad, so I don't know, but I'm very confident that you have to write an exam for that. Also, and I can talk about LSE because one of my friends, he did a national curriculum, which was ICSE, I believe. And at that time, he had to write an exam as well. I didn't because I studied IB. So, there are some different exams based on what you're applying from, like what you have studied previously and which college and course you're applying to. So, and that's something I guess is different for, different college and course combinations. And that's something you might have to just do a bit of research on. But there is a possibility of you writing exams. And secondly, the question was,
Is
what was the second
nonprofits
question now?
important? Are the nonprofits as important as they are in US?
Um, Maybe not as important, but if you've done something, if you think it's meaningful work, if you've learned something from it, or if it's something that's tied to your major in any way, then mention it. Like there is no harm in mentioning that something that you've done which is related to your major and something that you have learned from. But if you haven't done nothing, then don't worry about it. You can always do something else to compensate for it. So it's not a must.
Also, if you've just done for the sake of mama papa telling you to do, please don't write about it. And that has no validity for US or UK. Okay, we have a lot of questions on maths. I'm just going to frame them all together for you, Shreyas. Essentially, their
Sure.
children freaking out. What if they've not done well in grade 9 and 10, but are doing well in grade 11? And again, HL and SL. So I'm going to let you answer both these questions. And if there are any loopholes, I'll jump in.
Sure. So I think firstly, it's important to remember the context of where all of you are applying from, right? A lot of you applied, or not applied, sorry, a lot of you have studied, gone to school during the pandemic. There was an offline, online hybrid system. Some of you didn't have access to the best of facilities, and all of these could have affected your grades. So, the UK does consider all of those. So you either mention them, you have to find a good teacher who can talk about that in your recommendation letter. That'd be very helpful if they can provide some kind of basis to why you haven't performed as well as you expected to do, and then also talk about the fact that you worked on those kind of shortcomings and improved your grades, so on. Your letter of recommendation could highlight that. You could even spare a few words to talk about that in your personal statement. So don't worry, if you haven't done very well in ninth grade, because although 9th and 10th grades are important, your 11th and 12th counts for more. And as long as you've showed consistent improvement, that communicates well with your admissions officer as well. Coming to the point of IB, if you're applying for econ or any math heavy course, then IB HL is, you've got to do it. 99% or 90% of colleges or courses won't accept you, won't consider you if you haven't done IB math HL, if you're doing IB, that is. I'm not sure what the AA and AI thing is. I know my brother is, doing IB right now, so there is a difference between both. But as long as I'm aware, I think both of them are fine. Some colleges may have a preference, and you might want to have to read that in depth. But as long as you do IB Math HR for any quant-based course, then you're okay. SL, I would say, do a bit of research. Some colleges do accept people who have done, IB Math SL on econ-based courses, but that is not a very that's not a very often case that we see. That's something you might have to do a bit more research on.
Yes, I completely agree. Any HL, AA or AI is valid, but remember, HL is generally important for a large chunk of the courses. We are going to take a last question now, Shreyas, because I can see you're tired as well. And I wanted you to answer this question specifically because you've done a master's straight after your undergrad. Why did you choose it and how did you work around it? And I think that's very important for children to understand.
Sure. So this was after the second year, I had to make a decision whether I wanted to work straight after my third year, once I finished my undergrad, or whether I wanted to go and do a master's program. And also the kind of work I was trying to get into, econ consulting, it's usually encouraged for you to have a master's degree. So that kind of pushed me to do a master's even further. And, it's it's not completely unheard of, or I would say that, sorry, I would actually say that, you do see a lot of people doing their master's straight after their undergrad. And my choice boiled down to me doing something very similar to econ. So I did a master's in finance and econ, which is a 1-year master's. So most courses I applied to were either a master's in finance and econ or just a master's in finance. And I only had 5 or 6 colleges that I really wanted to apply to. And an important factor that I considered was, for me, because I studied in a city-based university, I really wanted to go to like a university town, somewhere with a big sprawling campus. So that became very important for me. And I think this is something that you might want to even think about when you're applying for your undergrad. You don't think these are very important factors, and you don't really think about it once you've actually arrived at the place. And sorry for the slight, kind of divergence here, but when I was applying for university, from undergrad, I always imagined like a sprawling big campus, and my ideal university was like this big US university with like big lawns. And I actually ended up going to a city-based university where there was no real campus. But I quite enjoyed it because you have so much to do in the city, you can never really get bored. So have a think about what kind of place you envision yourself being, but don't completely close your minds to other kinds of places. So that's something you want to keep in mind, whether you're applying for undergrad or postgrad at any point of time. So yeah, coming back to my master's applications, because I did my undergrad in the UK, I didn't have to write a GRE or GMAT, but I know for most places you have to write one or the other based on what the course requires you to do. Letters of recommendation remain as important, and you really have to communicate. Maybe this is where it's more important. Why do you want to do this master's? You already have an undergrad. How this master's going to help you? Is it because you want to switch kind of majors and go into a different field of study, or is it really important for your line of work? But really communicate why this master's is important, and that becomes even more important given that you already have 3 years of education, and most people don't end up doing a master's. So that's something you might want to have a think about even now if you're thinking of doing it in the future. So yeah.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Shreyas. And I know you've had to postpone flights just to accommodate us, and that means a lot. I also, Shreyas has been a part of my life. Now his brother's a part of our life. So it's a very special family indeed. But with that, children, I know I can still see questions pouring in. Remember, AcceptU students, reach out to Ninad, and we will try and connect you to have at least one call and maybe a UCAS read by either or of these children. For all our other children, reach out. We do have customized packages, and we'll be happy to accommodate you or at least answer your questions. So with that, I am going to take more than anything, give Shreyas a breather to take his break because he's with friends now. and trying to be off from a crazy work schedule. So good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Shreyas, means a lot that you did for me this whole webinar. Really appreciate it. So
Thank
with
you.
that, good night. Thank you. And Ninad, a special thank you to you, as always, working tirelessly to organize everything. So Ninad is the person who gets you to send all the Zoom links. Please, please save our Instagram, our numbers, because that's the only way we can send you the free listings of all our webinars. And we do at least one a month. The next one coming soon will be the Common App essay. Thank you. Good night. Bye, Shreyas. Bye, Ninad. Bye,
Bye. Thank you. Good
children.
luck, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.